Pat Nunley, former Baylor. He's in the Letterman's Hall of Fame at Baylor, also analyst for the Bears and men's basketball, joins us on 365 Sports. And Pat, I know it's a long night, late night, but 3 consecutive years, and I know it's hard to advance, it's hard to win, but 3 consecutive years without getting past the second round. Do you think that Scott, as good as he's been, does he need to look at a couple of different ways to get back to maybe who they were 2021, 22?
My initial reaction to that is no. I mean, because his formula for success and getting the NCAA tournament, which he's done, 9 out of the last 10 years. He's been a 3 seed in each of the last, 3 years. And the list goes on, is so strong. And when you compare it to the other teams across the country, it's as good as it gets. And so, that run into the tournament, losing to North Carolina that year, I thought North Carolina was grossly underseeded. Losing last night was disappointing, but I really kind of felt like the upside, maybe the ceiling for this team all season long was the Sweet 16. And, had they not left, 8 points at the free throw line in the last 6 minutes of the game, I still had a great chance to win at the end. So I'd say no. I mean, I'd say go with what you know, and it's been very successful as anybody else in the country. I think we're a little spoiled by the national championship. I do, because that was lightning in a bottle. It really was. And that was a team that was played under the old rules, sort of. You've had transfers come in that had to sit for a year, and they sat for a year, and they got better, and they got better. And those days, I think, are gone. And so everybody's trying to adjust to that. But, our success here, and I think Baylor fans need to stop and just really reflect on this, is as good as it gets in college basketball. There are a lot of college basketball programs right now that aspire to be Baylor University.
Again, Pat Nunley with us, with Baylor men's basketball color analyst on the radio broadcast with us. Richard Carr Motors, Baylor Bear Hotline. Paul?
Pat, this team is going to look drastically different next year because, Jalen Bridges is gone. They've got other players that are graduating. And then you have Yves Missi and Jacoby Walter, who in a perfect world, would take an NIL contract and come back for another year and get stronger and better at the little things. But that's probably not realistic because financially they're about to hit a windfall in the NCAA. How unfamiliar do you think fans will be with the roster when it rolls around next year?
I think pretty unfamiliar, but again, get used to that. I think that's just the way it's going to be in college basketball. I think Ojanwin is probably coming back. And again, this is Nunley's opinion. I don't know. And I think it's too early for anybody to know. I'm hoping Langston Love comes back. So there will be a nucleus there. I think Caleb Lohner, there's a good chance that we'll get him back as well. So I think the nucleus is good. And by the way, the freshmen that are coming in are big time players. Now they're still freshmen, and there's a big difference between succeeding at this level at 18 or 19 years old versus 22, 23, in some cases 24 years old. With the COVID year, we're seeing a lot of that still. But it'll be, I think, an unfamiliar roster. I think the nucleus is there. I was talking to one of the coaches the other night on the way to Memphis about Rob Wright, the point guard coming in. He's special. I mean, he's got a great feel for the game. And then you could have the same sort of analysis about the other 2 guys coming in. And so you augment those 3 guys with some really handpicked transfers from the portal, much like Baylor did a year ago with Ray J. Dennis, who's a huge get. I need to add Jaden Nunn to that list of folks that are probably coming back. It's a good nucleus, but we need high performers at key spots. And the transfer portal is just where you're going to go get them.
Pat, how will you look back on just a kind of a summary of this year and as it came to a close yesterday, just sort of what was going through your mind as that game progressed and it became clear of like they might be in a little bit of trouble here?
Yeah, Craig, I knew that Clemson was really good. I saw them just beat the stuffing out of New Mexico Friday after our game. I mean, they dismantled them. And New Mexico, if you look at all the bracketologists, New Mexico was picked to beat Clemson and then beat us and advance to the Sweet 16. And Clemson had no trouble with them. So that was a senior-laden, graduate transfer-laden team that really understood how to play and was playing extremely well, which is what you got to do in the tournament. So we knew they would be a handful. But to answer your question, as you're thinking, after those 2 missed free throws and then we just couldn't get it back, and Clemson was going to win that game, it was interesting. You get pretty philosophical in a hurry because that's the last game of the year. And you're starting to reflect on how you feel about the season and how they did. And personally, I thought this is about where we thought they would end up. Now, I said a second ago, I thought the ceiling was a Sweet 16. I still believe that. And they were close. They didn't get there. But they were picked to finish fourth in the league. They finished third. Again, they were a 3 seed once again. So I don't think you can feel bad once you get the bad taste out of your mouth about last night, about this season. I think they ended about where people expected them to be. A lot of folks thought this was a team, because of its talent and its offensive firepower, could make a run maybe as far as the Final Four. I felt like it was going to take some special nights to do that, and last night just wasn't special.
Pat, Davion Mitchell was the perfect point guard. He could score, obviously, an incredible defensive player. And they had heart and soul with Maceo and Jared Butler and Vital, et cetera. And I'm not trying to forget everybody else and even Matthew Meyer. But are we past the time in basketball because of the portal and because of maybe the way the game is played that you can't have, for example, a shutdown defensive guard but he's not a starter? Does that make sense what I'm asking you?
I think so. I mean, when you're describing Davion Mitchell, I'm thinking of Jamal Shedd at Houston.
Yes, okay.
And Shedd's a 4-year guy at Houston. He came there, he stayed there, and I don't know any of this, but I'm sure they're taking care of him in terms of their NIL package for him. But again, I watched him again for a half in person last night. It's the third time I've seen him. He's a dog. Mm-hmm. I mean, that dude is he's in Davion's league defensively. And, I don't know, Smokey, I don't, but I doubt you're going to go pluck him out of Houston or a place like that in the portal if he's otherwise being taken care of in terms of his NIL package. Yeah. But I think it's hard. Yeah.
Yeah. There was a good team and obviously one that was very much, you travel with them quite a bit or are there a lot. Very, very close, and it was devastating for them, like it is anybody that's all of a sudden gone. Their season is done. Just a little bit. How much did they miss what was a consistent type inside presence? Either what was missed more, on offense or on defense?
Defense. I mean, I even said last night, late in the game, and I say this a lot, when Baylor's down like Baylor was last night, Baylor has the offensive firepower to come back, right? A 10-point deficit for them with 6 minutes to play. It's very doable. I'll put it that way. But defensively, you got to get key stops. You just do. And I thought at the end of the game last night, they did that. Clemson went almost 5 minutes, maybe 4, without a field goal at the last of the game. Now, they were able to get to the free throw line, but not enough to sustain the double-digit lead that they had with 5 or 6 minutes to play. So it was a matter of Baylor getting stops. They did, and then going to the other end and making enough shots that they would have a chance to win. And frankly, that's exactly what happened. But to me, too, the key is when you're not at your best offensively, can you still win a game? And I think for the most part, that was a struggle for Baylor. It really wasn't last night. They just weren't at their best at the free throw line. And I thought that was their undoing. You can't leave, like I said a few minutes ago, you missed the 3 front ends of a 1-and-1 when the game's on the line. You're just not going to win. That's 6 points that you're just kind of flushing down the drain. And then those 2 at the end. And by the way, let me just say this. We're not in that situation without Jacoby Walter.
I agree.
And he missed those 2, but that happens. It just does. But it did happen. And that to me was, you get those 2 free throws down, it's a tie ball game with less than a minute to play. And there was enough difference between the shot clock and the game clock that even had they scored, as I recall, Baylor had a chance then again offensively to tie it up again.
Pat, they had this thing this year where they would, I've described it as they were kind of like Seabiscuit. They didn't know they were in a race until they were behind. And that usually comes with more veterans on the team where you can kind of break out of those habits. Is that, one of the risks you do have when you do have, even though they're 2 of your better players, but 2 of your better players that are freshmen and guys who, this 5 hasn't played together except for this year, that it's hard to build those things out in just a year.
It is. It's really hard to do that. But I think one of the reasons Baylor was pretty good playing from behind is that you get to a point where you just start playing, right? You quit thinking as much and you start playing more. And because of the firepower that they had and the talent they had offensively, they could do that if they coupled it with a couple of stops at the other end. But yeah, I mean, it's hard, particularly against a team like Clemson, who is one of the best free throw shooting teams in the country. If you get down 10, it's going to be really difficult to put them at the line if you have to, and still figure out a way to win the game. Yeah, I think that's part of it, is the inability. Offense is about rhythm. Defense is about principles. And so you've got to build chemistry. You've got to build rhythm offensively. And I thought towards the end of the year they had done that. They had become – they were always a really good offensive team. But towards the end of the year, I thought they were better. They were getting to the line. They got the ball to the rim. They played downhill at the guard spot. And when they're doing that, they're at their best. And second half again last night, they got to the line. And that's what you have to do. This team has to get to the free throw line, and they're really good at it. Got there last night, but just had nothing to show.
Yeah, they didn't make them. Thanks for your time, Pat. You're around the team quite a bit. I saw some of the interviews that Jack McKenzie in the post game, the locker room as well. It just seemed like a team that, like everyone else, devastated. But how tight of a group was this? And obviously they're about to lose about half the roster.
Yeah, and I think this is a credit to the coaches. I've been around forever, and I think this, if not the best, it's one of the best group of just dudes, right, that have ever been in the program together. These are great kids. There were never off the court issues. They could be frustrating on the court at times, but these guys were close. They really truly loved one another. And all of the emotion after the game, Dave, I think you just spoke to this. All the emotion after the game was much less about the loss than it was about we're done.
Yep.
The experiences that we've been able to build together, even abroad last summer, they're over now. And guys are going to separate. Guys are going to move on. And I think that was devastating to them, maybe even more so than the loss.
Thank you, Pat. Great stuff. I know it was a long night turnaround as well. Pat Nunley, men's basketball analyst for Baylor, and also former Baylor guard with us on 365 Sports.